We'll kick off. So I want to welcome and thank you all for coming and attending our webinar today, Redefining What's Possible in Reality Capture with the Tersus MVP S1 and S2 SLAM LiDAR systems. Today I will be one of your hosts, Jacob Wittenberg with Desert Creative Group, as well as along with my colleague Dustin Haar at Desert Creative Group as well. And today we will be, discussing these solutions pretty and robust. And I want to leave space at the end for questions. So within your window, if you want to ask a question, we'll answer questions at the end. There's a box of 9 dots. If you click on that, that'll take you to an option to be able to provide and submit questions through the Q&A process. And with that, well, let's get started. So for those of you that may not know, Desert Creative Group is the master distributor for Tersus GNSS in the United States and Canada. So we work very closely with a retail and a resale partner network in many states and provinces, and that we support as resellers. And so in your region, you may have somebody close by. If you are outside of Canada or the US, we do have or Tersus does have resellers globally. And if they don't have one in your region, you can always reach out to Tersus Direct as well for additional info. So with that, I am going to pass this off to my colleague, Dustin Haar, and he's going to get started with some information about SLAM technology in general and kick off the S1. Dustin?
Okay, thanks, Jacob. So we'll start off with really quickly reviewing just the SLAM technology as a whole and a little bit on how this works. So SLAM stands for or is simultaneous localization and mapping. And if we look at this, not 2 slides, look at this from a very basic concept. With the 2 things that it's doing, it's calculating its position based off of non-moving features. That's how it's doing its positioning or its localization element of it. In conjunction with doing that, it's also mapping in 3D with the laser scanning element of it. As a whole, that is how SLAM is working. Below that image, I'll get into that in a few minutes, just showing us how we see all of this happening in real time. So why rapid reality capture? Well, we're creating either 2D or 3D maps of unknown environments without using GNSS by using onboard sensor fusion. And that sensor fusion is combining LiDAR, IMU, cameras, and some other sensors to create accurate positioning and environmental modeling. Now, with form factors that we're seeing today, these can be anything from handheld devices, they can be SLAM solutions from a drone, and you even have vehicle-mounted SLAM-based solutions. And really this just accelerates reality capture, creating point clouds and models for GIS, survey, inspection, digital twins, construction, and much more. So on the history side of this is really in the late 1900s is when these concepts began to be something useful in the field. And what that would be originally for was around robots and other devices for navigation. So if we step forward a few years later, this is things that we all began starting to use, which maybe even is with something as simple as a Roomba vacuum cleaner. That was using SLAM, and still is using SLAM for doing 2D mapping. So if we take that and look at where things evolved from there, from a 3D mapping perspective, it was around 2013 when some manufacturers began creating things that would give us the ability to do 3D. So still using a 2D LiDAR sensor, they would mount it on a spring and then in essence giving that 2D plane more angle to it, so you're doing 3D mapping. With that SLAM algorithm at the time, the biggest thing that we're seeing between then and now is the advancements of the SLAM algorithm. So what's setting Tersus apart from other manufacturers? Well, we're using our own fully proprietary AI-powered SLAM engine. And this is going to be different from an open source solution that maybe falls short. And as that SLAM algorithm has improved over the years, some of the things that we saw in early days when looking at point clouds from a SLAM data or in SLAM data, you would notice things that could be a problem. And what you'd look at is drift or ghosting or some of those types of things when you're looking through your data set to see if you had good data or not. And sometimes that would be hard to actually determine when that happened. So in order to eliminate that and to have more confidence in our data, what you're looking at here is a list of some of the tests and or procedures we go through with our data set in our SLAM engine to validate that we're collecting good data. If you're not familiar with what drift looks like, typically the location or localization of the device over time and historically in more wide open areas, you're going to get something that the device doesn't actually understand where it's at because there isn't enough things for it to measure to, and so it can get drift. And this is sometimes resulting in point clouds that can have rotation or some sort of misalignment through time. The other thing, like I mentioned, is ghosting. And when you get ghosting in a laser scan, that could be either like a double feature or a blurry edge on something, showing that we are not getting consistent, like a one-to-one data. Like what we see is what we're measuring. So some of these things we go through, like the loop closure, which you'll see on the next slide, we go through that, looking at how we deal with point cloud thickness and edge sharpening, moving objects removing, and things like that. So we'll jump into the MVP S1 here. This is our newest laser scanner in our portfolio, and this one is a handheld-based RTK SLAM solution. So this is giving us real-time scanning results in the field with a point cloud that is within 1 centimeter thickness and overall large site capability, less than 5 centimeter absolute accuracy. This device has a 70-meter range and is typically used in a handheld form fashion. Since this does have RTK embedded in it and integrated into it, this is used for either site localization or also another check. So the device, we know that we're not getting drift in the open environment. It's a check for that as well. This device also supports GCPs, which are ground control points, and we can capture up to 150 minutes of data in one capture. The system itself, you'll see we have the 3D LiDAR sensor, which is a dome-shaped device on the front. The base and GCP target acquisition plate is on the bottom. So what happens there is in the opening on the front side of that handle, there's a crosshair. We set that device over our control point, or if it's on a wall, we could hold it in that 90-degree angle. And I'll show you where we measure that in our software and how that looks. The bottom part of the device is the battery and the handle. That battery is simply charged with USB-C. We have the RTK module on the top, and we have 2 cameras that are 48 megapixel, not only for our data capture and colorization, but this is how we're also getting the 3D Gaussian splatting support as well. To use this device, it's a relatively straightforward 3-step process. So step 1, the capture side of things, we can use an either iOS or Android-based device, and you download the app, and it's a 3D real-time colorized visualization in the field. Step 2, we're going to process that. Very straightforward processing procedures and some predefined SLAM profiles, and then deliver. This is our free viewer and analysis tool that comes with the device. So we'll show you a little bit more on each one of these here. So when you turn on the app, you have a pretty straightforward interface to start. You can either go in and look at tutorials, the file management, or simply hit start to start the data capture. So again, this is on either iOS or Android. Your phone is connected up to the scanner through a Wi-Fi connection, and you'll get a real-time colorized point cloud visualization on the screen. I'll clarify that the device is storing all of the data locally. It's not stored on your phone. And we have a the quarter 20 threading, which I'll touch on in a minute and why that's valuable, and the ability to connect to an N-trip. So if we want to use an RTK in an N-trip environment, we have that support in here as well, and collecting control points. So what does this look like in the field? So on your phone, you're going to see the point cloud, and this is maybe 10% of the actual resolution that you see on the screen, just giving you an indication of what you have for coverage. So as we look across from the top, we can see we've been capturing data for about 8 minutes in an RTK fixed position. On the right side, we can change our camera perspective. We can change the colorization of the point cloud. And we can also either start or stop our data collection with that red circle with the square in the middle. Below that, in the middle of our point collection, we can hit the ground control point. So we set it over our point, hit that measurement. We do not have to stop the scan or anything from there. And then below that is our file folder for our file management on our device. As you see there, it says loop detected on the bottom of the screen. And what that means is as we go through our scan, it will give us indicators of when it is seen a loop detected in the field. The ability to have it detect loop closure is beneficial because this is also enhancing its SLAM confidence. So it gives you that in the field as well. After the data is collected in the field, we drag that information off onto our PC for local processing. This is all local. And we are in our MVP S1 Mapper software. This software, when we fire it up and say we want to process some data, we essentially aim it to the directory where the files are stored, and we have the optimizer line item. So this is where we're picking what we want it to process. If we are going to collect RTK and process RTK data, we'll put a check mark box there. If we needed control points in there and we want to go through that process, check mark there. And if we want it to create a couple different types of photo outputs, we put a check mark in front of the panorama box, and we're going to get a lot more support for photo stuff on the back side of that. Below that, we select the mode and the scene. So the mode is how do we want to process this data? Just fast, because we want to get the data out, and the absolute accuracy may not be the most critical element of it. We can select fast. If you want the best quality possible out of that, you just change it to best quality for your mode. Your next thing down is the scene. So hint to the software what type of environment that it was in. Was it indoor and more narrow, or was it more of a wide open space, or was it blended a little bit of everything? This is just getting the system prepared for what it's how the SLAM algorithms should run through this data set. And when we're done, we spit this out in one of our common point cloud formats. So again, in the same software, once the data has been processed, if you apply coordinates to it from RTK, whatever, you can use this as a standard viewer. This same software, anybody can install. There's no charge for it. And you can do any of this analysis with the point clouds. So some of these tools, like I have listed out here, I'll give you an idea of how those tools look and work in the software. So we'll fire up the software and give you a view of this S1 Mapper software. So right now we have a point cloud open, and oftentimes this is used as just a good viewing tool. So I'll give you a little peek as to how we change the point cloud size or your point size, your couple different ways of colorizing the point cloud in here, and also just changing maybe if you want some shadowing or eye dome lighting on the points. Sometimes that helps with identifying edges and corners. I know I'm moving a little bit fast in here, so it might get a little blurry, but that was eye dome lighting. We also have X-ray, which X-ray is probably most used in a building type scenario where you have roofs and walls and things that you'd like to look through. But in this case, I happen to get a little bit of some storm drain information just through that grate. So I guess that's a decent application of when we could turn on the X-ray to see a little bit through a point cloud. So those are some of your viewing tools. Once we get past that, some of the analysis tools. So to use distance, it's simply picking on 2 points anywhere in the point cloud and getting a distance between those points. When I click and create those distances, you'll see over on the left, we would have the ability to export those measurements as well in a CSV format. Beside distance, we have a tool for area, very similar to distance. We're just clicking on as many points as we want to use. And once we've closed out that polygon, we're going to see an area, a total area between those locations. The next tool commonly used in here, either for clearance or height, is the height measurement tool. So you're going to simply click on the top part, and then maybe instead of worrying about clicking on a point directly below it, we can click on the ground, and then you would get it and use it for clearance. Or if you're looking for height, similar deal. Like if we do that on this tree here, click on the ground, and then click on the top of the tree, and we can get our measurements in this way with the height tool that's built in. You can also, if there is a need for measuring angles, that's simply clicking points on the point cloud, or identifying. In this case, there was a PK nail on the ground with a little bit of flagging, and if we had processed RTK with it, we would see that actual real world coordinate of that PK nail. In this case, I didn't have that applied yet. So any point you click on, you can have a coordinate extraction, and then again, be able to export that out in a CSV file. Your next tool over beside that is for volume. Although this might not be the best way to demonstrate the volume, this will give you the idea on how the tool works. Essentially, get a top-down view. You draw a polygon around the area that you would like to get a volume or a pit, and you hit compute. This will run through this process here, compute the cut fill, and then it'll also generate it in a little report, and that report is going to give you the cut fill and also an image of where you captured that. And from there, it's just saved in a PDF format. And that is our volume tool integrated into here. And then the last one I want to show you, if you are working with point clouds, you'll know that doing a profile or a slice through the point cloud is pretty common. And this is, again, checking QA/QC of your data. Maybe it's easier to do measurements from this perspective instead of in 3D. Just overall being able to work with the data from this perspective is nice sometimes. So that is integrated in with this tool. Otherwise, just using this as a viewing tool to comb through your point cloud and make sure you had coverage on everything you wanted. Maybe looking at some edges and corners, making sure that you have a good definition on profiles. Stairs are something that people look at, or curb and gutter a lot of times, just to make sure there isn't any shadows or ghosting. Again, moving kind of fast here, so it could get blurry for a second for you guys, but just trying to give you an idea of what does this viewer look like, and overall give you an idea of what the quality of the data is out of the S1. So with a device like this, we're seeing there's obviously a ton of versatility in the type of applications that people can use this in. And this is a small list here, but some of these things I do have some examples for, and I can give you a little bit more idea on what this looks like. This data set here was captured with the S1 as well. One of them that seems to generate, there seems like there's a lot of conversation around manholes and storm vaults and underground structures. And so a couple different data sets here, just to, again, giving you the idea of what does this data look like if we are capturing this, and is it capturing enough data that you can define radiuses, heights, inverts, any of the type of measurement information you're typically getting out of this. And so again, just trying to give attendees here an idea of what the data looks like from the S1. And this was captured in less than 2 minutes. Now, sometimes the manholes aren't always that straightforward and simple. And so showing you a little bit more of a complex one next. Now this is more of an offset structure from the hole, and it also has a baffle in the middle. And sometimes that can be a little bit more of a challenge just to get those measurements. So again, giving you an example of one of the samples that we captured here, the ground was frozen. So things on the bottom were like ice and things, but giving you an idea what this data looks like. Does this give you enough data for the measurements and information that is needed in your application? Trying to help with that here. And there's the proof that there is snow on the ground, and it is cold here. The next application that I'll touch on quickly here before I turn it back over to Jake is giving you an idea, what's this data look like in a forested environment or denser trees, a little bit of a blend of coniferous and deciduous trees, and what we get out of that. And so take this data, and maybe this was a 5-minute collect or something, and running it through one of a software that may support doing classification. So in this case, we ran classification to extract ground and high vegetation or trees, and it would automatically decipher between the two, put those in 2 different categorizations. And in this case, the software has a feature like point feature extraction tool where it can identify trees. And so just giving you a little bit of a cross section here of what it looks like when it looks through data from the S1 to automatically extract features and attributes of, in this case, a tree, showing you the trunk diameter and spread and things like that. With that, I will turn it over to Jacob, and he can wow you with the S2.
All right. Thank you, Dustin. Very appreciative on that. And just to recap on the S1, again, a handheld solution that you can put in the hands of anyone. Easy to use, simple form factor. And, diving into the next iteration here is the MVP S2. This unit is going to be a much different unit. And what I mean by that is going to be a much higher accuracy unit, also shooting longer trajectories. This unit is going to be set up and utilized for long corridor projects, things like shooting topography, shooting campuses, large buildings, long data collection timeframes. So one of the beautiful parts about this unit is it does have a more robust LiDAR sensor. This sensor is actually capturing 640,000 points per second as we are moving. And with the receiver that's built into it, it does support N-trip, and we can get down to centimeter thickness for the data itself in the point cloud. Moving beyond that, we've seen less than 3 centimeter absolute accuracy, which we'll touch on here in a bit. And the nice part is we can use RTK for localization. We can also use GCP support if we don't have GNSS. Maybe we're working indoors or in an environment where we don't have N-trip available. And with this robust data capture solution, we can get up to 3 hours with the 2 batteries that are included. You can always add more batteries. They are hot swappable, so you can have some long uninterrupted missions. And the internal storage on is about 1 terabyte. So it gives you a lot of flexibility for how you want to work. So with that being said, this unit, like I said, does have an RTK module. And so it has the antenna on top. This does support N-trip, and this is included with the unit. You also have the cameras that are built into it with a 1-inch sensor. The 1-inch sensor does pick up a lot of light, even in challenging environments. The LiDAR sensor itself, as you can see, is down below that, and that spins and rotates. So it's capturing, it's rotating as you're capturing. The nice thing is that this, again, could be backpack or handheld mount on the left-hand side. Beside the MVP S2 logo, you'll see a little green area with a little quick release bracket. That is actually how you take it off. Just like the S1, you do have a plate on the bottom for setting it over ground control points. And then you have the master module on bottom. Again, this is where the information is being collected to. So it's not to your phone or anything like that, just directly into the unit. So it can support up to 1 terabyte of data. That's a lot of data. So I don't really foresee you running out of space for any large missions. So with that being said, you can also swap out the antenna that's included with it and utilize something like the Tersus Luca GNSS receiver. The value is that this unit does support ntrip, just like the one that's included with it. However, if you are working in an area where ntrip is unavailable, you could set up your own base station and broadcast corrections via radio, or you could utilize Tersus's tap positioning, their PPP service, and get real-time survey grade level accuracy anywhere you have a clear view to the southern sky. That is a subscription for that service. And the beautiful part, though, is that you can really get real-time corrections anywhere that can be used in conjunction with the SLAM algorithm. So very similar to the S1. The S2 is built upon 3 different software stacks. First is the capture software. This is a very easy to use web UI in the field. The web UI is simple to use. You actually just connect up via Wi-Fi to the S2. Once you're connected to Wi-Fi, you'll just put in an IP in a web browser, and you'll be able to hit this from an Android, iOS, a Linux device, Windows PC. Doesn't matter what the device is. You can capture it really on anything that can hit the internet with a browser. The nice thing is that it will give you 3D visualization in real time as well. So after you've captured the data, you can take the data off, process the data. The data for the S2 is a bit more advanced than for the S1. One of the nice things is it does have configurable SLAM algorithm processing, meaning that we can actually adjust the weights and the values of how the data is processed for different environments, and we're in full control of that. The last thing is that this is localized processing. This isn't cloud-based. So one of the real benefits to that is that, we're not burning up credits or anything like that. This is your software. When you load it and you install it and you're processing it on your machine, you can actually process the data even in the field, if you wanted to, just to ensure the data came out before you leave a project site. Lastly, you do have a mechanism for delivering and sharing the data. The cool part is that this actually includes a free viewer. So when you send the data to somebody or host the data to share to somebody, and they download it, they can actually download this viewer along with it, and it's free. There's no licensing required. There's some pretty extensive tools in there as well that we'll take a look at in further detail. So let's dive into the capture process. So with the S2 and connecting up via Wi-Fi, as you can see on the right-hand side, I've got differential GNSS via RTK through my ntrip correction through the caster service. And I'm walking along and I have this backpack mounted. So as you can see, my trajectory is moving forward, but it's capturing behind me. And so the neat thing is that as I'm walking, I can actually see it building the point cloud. The nice thing is for large missions and large projects, I can ensure that I've actually captured what I need in the field in real time. This is kind of a bit different than some other platforms that maybe don't give you this visualization. The nice thing is, though, I have confirmation before I leave that I've captured what I need. So as you can see, I'm going to rotate here, and it's going to build the point cloud, and it's quite a ways away. One of the values is of this sensor versus, say, even on the S1 is that this sensor shoots a longer trajectory. So you can actually capture data up to about 120 meters. It's actually able to reach. So the value is that it can actually hold and gather structure farther away as you're walking. So even in challenging environments where you may be in a flat plane trying to capture topography and things like that, sometimes SLAM struggles in those environments. The S2 does a really good job. So diving into the processing side of things. So with the software, it is a pretty robust and configurable processing software. The nice part is that it does colorization of the point clouds. You're in full control of whether you want the point cloud colorized or non-colorized. You have the ability to process the panoramic images with orientation. And then also you can apply coordinates for the control points. So I do have an example of that right after this that we can take a look at. And then this is the big one. If you've ever processed SLAM data in the past, historically, especially with some of the early models, sometimes you'd get a bust. Your SLAM solution would maybe float or you'd get drift, and you'd have to send in the data to the manufacturer and see if they could fix it or correct it. And some of the things they were doing possibly was maybe adjusting some of the values on how that data got processed. One of the nice things is with the MVP2 mapper software is you can actually adjust for the IMU and the intensity for the weighted values on how that gets processed into the algorithm or how the algorithm processes that solution. So this is something that can really open flexibility for processing the data and actually save the data if you're seeing drift or float or things like that. this can actually, rectify issues in that processing. One of the other things that is really neat is that it does have full coordinate system support as well. So we can actually localize to a coordinate system, or if we've captured it using RTK, we can utilize, obviously being a lat long WGS 1984 after capture, but say we want this in a state plane or UTM coordinate system, those are all supported. We can actually just put in the EPSG, or if we have a, let's say a custom coordinate system and we know the transformation parameters, like a 7-parameter transformation, we can actually key those in. We have GeoID support as well. And then lastly, nice thing is we can export this to all common file types. So LAS, LEZ, E57, and bring this into all sorts of different software platforms. So diving into this next, I did a quick capture around our warehouse, and you can see I have some control points outlined out there. And I use this in handheld mode. I did not use the RTK antenna with this. I actually just went out, captured it handheld, just had relative coordinates to each other, and then I processed it utilizing the control points that I went out and shot with a GNSS receiver. So I had my control points. I knew the control points that were there. These control points were shot with a GNSS receiver. They very well could have been relative coordinates shot with a total station even. However, I did use GNSS in this example. And one of the neat things is after I processed the data, the first time I reprocessed it and actually applied these coordinates for my control. Well, as you can see in the residuals here, even picking out the coordinates in here, not saying this will happen all the time, but I did get pretty good results here. We're seeing about a 1.1 centimeter horizontal and about a 1.4 millimeter on the vertical, which is pretty tight, pretty awesome. So I get a lot of questions on whether this could be utilized for survey grade work. Depends upon your project, but I would say this is a pretty awesome solution for retaining accuracy and really getting very, very tight data. So just one thing to touch on that as well. I do have a full write-up and a white paper on this as well. So if this is something that you would like to see, we will send this out with the recording of the video as well. So next is the Tersus MVP S2 viewer software. So this is the software that is included as part of the data set. So when you send the data set off to somebody, you can share this S2 viewer. They can load it on any Windows PC. And the nice thing is it gives people who maybe are experts at other things that, don't have a lot of experience with point clouds or data. Maybe they're just stakeholders in a project or something like that. They can get real visualization of a site, a project, an interior space, whatever it might be. The nice thing is it includes the oriented point cloud and imagery viewer, allows you to define coordinates out of there, pick coordinates out of there, measure distances, angles, height measurements, and then also have some very similar visualization tools as the S1 software that we went through. So let's take a look. So if I open up a project, what you're going to see is that I'm going to get the point cloud, colorized point cloud. I'm going to also have the trajectory. That's the yellow line that you see as we go through there. And then I'm also going to have the photospheres. As part of the tools, I can adjust the point cloud budget. So if I don't have a very fast computer, I can remove some of the point cloud density. I can also change the visualization. So in this example, I just swapped it over to elevation, and we can choose some of the structure, color structure as well. And then from there, I can switch it back over to RGB and enable the iDome lighting. iDome lighting is nice because it really does help to add some shadow and context to the point cloud itself. As you can see, the data from the S1 is clean. Yes, they are not doing a lot of smoothing, but just the accuracy of the LiDAR sensor is just very good. And, things that we can see is the texture. We can see pipe fittings within that pit. Pretty awesome. If I click into the photosphere, this is the photo that is actually being utilized to colorize the point cloud. So these photos are captured as I'm walking along, and then they're utilized. They're also oriented. So if I go to a dual screen mode here, or split screen mode, I can actually see the orientation of the photos. As I pan around, see direction. I can also still have the 3D view on the point cloud side of things as well. But yeah, if I want to extract out points as an example. I can zoom in and I can get right over whatever I want to capture. So in this example, if I click on the pipe, if I want to get an elevation or a location of the pipe, I have that. If I want to measure heights or distances, I have that functionality available as well in here. So again, just very clean data. The data, even in the viewer here, is very quick. It's responsive, easy to use for people, and you can see the clarity of the data very simply. So let's take a look at a more robust data set. So this was probably about an hour capture, walking around, maybe a little bit more. And this was both inside and outside, and also to include the courtyard there. So a very challenging environment. Again, this was done in one go, one pass. This wasn't multiple passes, it was just one. So let me clip it down here quick and just take a look at some of the data. So again, this is one trajectory. So just walking through this area, I just want to show the clarity and the detail of this data on the curb edge here. One thing that, as Dustin had mentioned, sometimes smoothing happens in the processing. And what you'll get is you almost get like a curb or a set of stairs that look like there's snow on it, even when there's not, right? And part of that's because the processing, right? They're really smoothing the point cloud. Tersus has really put a big, large emphasis on keeping the data very clean, right? Giving you absolute accuracy wherever available, right? And keeping that data very tight. They're not as focused on, I guess, looking pretty, a photorealistic image. Gaussian splats can help with that. However, for the point cloud itself, they're really focusing this on engineering grade data, survey grade data. So again, this was actually captured outside on the outside wall, and the inside wall was actually captured when RTK was not available. So one of the things that I wanted to show is up this staircase, there was no GNSS. This was just the SLAM algorithm itself. And as you can see, there's no twisting, there's no cork spin or drift that happened. You can see the walls are very tight, very thin, all the way up, all 4 floors there. And again, this just shows the ability of the S2 to really hold its accuracy even throughout large project sites like this. And so with that being said, I do want to kick over to this right here. And one of the neat things is we did at Geo Week this year, we went and took a kind of a extracurricular field trip over to Red Rocks, and we actually walked the campus there, or the whole amphitheater. And as you can see from the yellow lines, that's my trajectory, and that's where we walked. We walked for about 20 minutes, and we were actually able to capture pretty much all of Red Rocks, which was pretty awesome. I had actually met with some people who did a similar scan there, and I think it was probably over 100 scans with a terrestrial scanner to tie everything together. We captured something very similar in about 20 minutes, which is pretty awesome. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about with this is that, yes, it captured obviously the stairs and things like that as it went down. It actually captured all the way up to the top of the rock wall up there as well. One of the neat things about this is I've showed this data set to quite a few people and shared it out. And a lot of people ask, like, well, what drone did you use in accordance with it? It's like, well, there's no drone. This was actually all just captured with the S2. So one of the things I was going to say, if you want more information about this, we did a full blog write-up on our website about it. And let me share the screen just to show you where to find that at, just because the data is very good from it. And I feel like it's something that I'd be happy to share the data with you and let you check it out. So let me pull this up here real quick. So if you go to our website, which would just be geospatial.desertcreativegroup.com, and you come over to our resources tab, you'll see that we actually have a full write-up, as well as about I think it's a 10 to 15 minute video of the whole process from capture to processing to showing the data, and how we captured the data and some value to the S2 during the capture. Yeah, and so this robust data set is available if you'd like to have it, like to see it and check it out. Happy to share that with you. Let me go back to sharing the other screen here real quick. And so with that being said, just like the S1, the S2 has a lot of application usages. This is everything from manholes and vaults like the S1, but diving in deeper, right? This is great for those large project sites. If you're doing bridges, structures, buildings, whatever it might be, that is a maybe more mission critical or a larger project site, maybe backfilling on a campus that maybe you've flown with a drone as well and incorporating the data from both. The S2 is a really great tool for that. And diving in lastly, again, like I mentioned, this is your software, this is your hardware, processing happens on your machines. One of the nice things is that you're in full control of that data, and you can also bring this data into other file or other formats because it is all common file formats. So here you can see a data set in Cloud Compare. Just makes for a good visualization tool. There's a lot of other software solutions out there as well for working with the point cloud data. Some of them are going to be more feature rich with visualization. Some are going to be feature rich with data extraction and classification. And so, different software have different values. The nice thing is that because these are all common file types, file format types, we can really leverage and utilize this data in, any application. So lastly, looking here, this is classified data, looking at it within a software, and feature extraction or automated extraction can really help improve workflows and efficiency. So these are some things that, just to take in consideration. The capture side of it's one thing, but, what is the value of the data and where's the data going after that for processing and analysis, right? So with that, I want to open it up to questions and discussions.
Yeah, that's a great job. Thanks, Jacob. One thing we didn't cover, and it's a common question we get, let's say on like that last data set was collected with the S1, that intersection. If something like that took 5 minutes to walk in the field, what do people expect for processing times?
Yeah, no, that's actually a great question, and it isn't determined upon the time of the collection. It's actually determined upon the volume of data within the file. So what I mean by that is that if you are in a very structure-rich environment, say you're in a pump house at a city in a water department, there's going to be a lot of different fittings, pipes, different structures within there, and it's probably going to capture a lot of points in there in a short period of time. So what I mean by that is if you did 5 minutes in there versus 5 minutes outside where there's maybe 3 trees in a roadway, I have a feeling the first file is probably going to take a little bit longer to process. But in that instance, I would say in a 5-minute capture like that, you'd probably see, probably about 10 minutes to 15 minutes to process that data. That's a good question, Dustin.
Yeah, to add on to that, specifically like to the S1, if you are processing panoramas and applying RTK coordinates to each pixel, essentially, you may see that take 20 to 25 minutes, and a lot of that is the panorama processing, how it's doing everything with those photos.
Yep, so I do see we have another question here. Does the S1 software include the viewing tool?
Yes, that's a good point. So that same S1 software that we did processing with is also the same tool that is the analysis tool. So for measuring and a viewer and all that, the only difference is if you don't have the software or the hardware lock on for processing, then it's just used as a viewer. So anybody can install that software, whether it's internal in your organization or external your clients. Anybody can install that software and run that and do everything we did. Actually, all those analysis tools that I did, there was no license being used for that.
Yeah, so then if I have it right, it's actually the same software. It's just when you use the license key, it gives you the option for processing data as well. So a little bit different than the S2, where the S2 is actually 2 different softwares. You have the processing software, which you would install on your computer, and then you also have the viewer software, which is separate, that would get sent with the data itself.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Well, I do see we are at our time here, and we have a couple other questions, but we can actually send those out via email and answer them there. We will be sending out a recording of this, as well as a couple other links to some other webinars and information, such as one from Luis at Tersus. He actually did an S2 presentation last week. We'll send that out, as well as information on the Red Rocks data set and on the white paper that I created. So with that being said, if you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to us at sales@desertcreativegroup.com. And yeah, look forward to chatting with you. And if you have any questions on how to integrate this into your workflow, we are happy to help. Thanks for attending our webinar today, and have a great day.